first thing I want to do is make certain that my chain lays nice and flat. And in this particular example, we're doing fantastic. I'm going to clip away those last 2 links that we had to hold on to while we were doing the twist. So just clip those out of here. I'm going to be working on a bench block. So this one is one that it's not a fantastic one. It's got lots of pits and mars, and that's definitely not going to be an issue. What I need to do now is I need to mount this onto a board. This is just something that I happen to find out in my garage, and I want to find something that is approximately the same width as my chain. You can see that mine is a little bit wider, and that will still work just fine. As we had a discussion about this particular project in the group that we are doing on Facebook, where we work through all the different projects, the question inevitably came up, can I use something like Jet Basic or Thermalock, which is basically a polymer. It's a thermoplastic, and when you heat up that plastic, then you can mold it to do whatever you want to do. And that was my total intention of using for this project. However, I found out very quickly it does not work. What happens is that thermoplastic, yes, is going to mold around my chain, however, it will not hold it into place. So we really do need to use some DOP wax for this. DOP wax is very inexpensive. You can buy it at any of your local lapidary shops, your jewelry shops, places like Rio, Stoller, Auto Fry. Any of those places are going to have that, as well as any lapidary shops online would have this as well. So I highly suggest you actually do that. Now, there was another video I saw recently where they screwed the chain down, and that is definitely a possibility. However, you have to keep in mind that the middle section of your chain will probably move a little bit, and that is what we are trying to avoid in using that DOP wax. Let me show you how I use the DOP wax, and we'll go from there. So this is going to be a 2-part process for me. This is the way that I found worked the best for me, and you guys can figure out what you need to do for you. This is a stick of DOP wax, and you can see that I have some little melted ends right here at the very tip. And what I'm going to do is put a little layer of this DOP wax or DOP right here along the edge of the board. In addition to that, I'm going to warm up my chain, and then I'm going to drip some of this DOP onto here as well. Now, before I adhere the 2 of them together, I'll use this board and just kind of run along my chain either direction, just to make certain that it's nice and straight. It's important that we have that straight plane right there. When you're using this DOP wax, you just need a candle flame basically. So I am going to use my torch, but it's going to be fuel only, no oxygen added to it. A very, very soft yellow flame is all that I need. All right, so this is what I'm going to be using for my flame. Very, 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 very soft. And I just kind of touch it onto this wax. I want to be very careful not to make the wax boil or smoke or anything like that. So just be paying attention. This will take just a minute as it drips, but you can see that it goes on fairly quick. I need to at least get it as long as my chain. I'm pretty happy with what I am seeing right here on the edge of my board. That's going to be great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend just a little bit of time right here warming up my chain. This is a necessary step because that chain needs to be warm to have that wax adhere to it. So it's not going to take a whole ton of time. And now that the chain is a little bit warmed up, I'm going to just drip a bit of the wax onto one side of it. And I don't have to do a whole lot, but I definitely want it to kind of get in between those chain links so that I can really get that chain held nice and tight. And that looks pretty good to me. Again, I'm just going to warm up this chain just a little bit. Going to again just touch really briefly on this dot that I have up here. Make sure it's nice and soft. And now, like I said before, I'm just going to touch that chain, make sure we've got it nice and straight. Make any kind of adjustments that I might need to. I'm going to turn the board over and gently press this down onto the chain and the dot that I applied to the chain. And I'm going to hold this here for just a moment. And now when I flip this over, I should have my chain all nice and arranged on here. If you happen to notice that your chain is not lying flat, so you'll want to kind of look at it from the edge, or you might notice that some part is up versus another, all you need to do is just warm this up and you can position things where you need them to be. But I also want to see that it has actually adhered to my chain along the side as well. And once you have this all on here evenly, we are ready to go to the next phase. And things look good on mine. Now that I have my chain mounted, I've taken my board and I've placed it into my vise. I have a number 2 cut hand file that I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do is work across the chain kind of diagonally like this. And we are going to file in all of these facets. And you want to check to make sure that as you're filing, you're doing it evenly. So if your chain happens to be tilted a little bit, which is not ideal, I would probably warm things up and push one side down. But as long as you're watching what you're doing, you should be able to do this and get a nice, good facet that's even all the way across. And this is also going to show where you have any high spots versus low spots. So it looks like I actually have a couple of low spots right here on my chain. Notice that I use the entire length of my file. And I'm going to continue to do this until all of those facets are nice and even. I find that it's helpful to have a toothbrush or some kind of brush so that you can brush away the filings that get in between the links, and that will really show you where you might have some uneven spots. And I find also that the more I file down, the much more even these facets become. If you want to curl the ends or curve those sides, now is the time to do that as well. And you will just use, again, the entire length of your file, but you kind of round over the edges as you do it. When you are happy with your facets and the way that your chain is looking, it's time to flip this over and to do the other side. In order for you to do this, you need to take this, put it into the freezer for about 10-15 minutes, and then you will easily be able to break this off. In order for you to get the extra dot that might still be stuck in between the links, you can use some acetone to remove that. Now that the facets on one side have been completed, it's time to turn this over and do the facets on the other side. You'll see here that I still have a bit of the wax inside of my links, and I'm just fine with that for right now. You can use a solvent to remove that, but I'm going to leave mine for now. This time I want my facets face side up. Again, I'm going to warm up the dop that I already have on my board, going to warm up my chain, I'll add a little bit more dop, and then I will repeat that process of filing these facets. So here I've just taken this out of the freezer. I kind of knocked it onto my table a bit and my chain has come free. There is a bit of the dop wax still in between each of my links. So I'm going to use my fingers as much as possible to loosen that up while it is still cold. And then whatever does not come out, I'll just put into a solvent and be able to remove the rest of it that way. But then just looking over my chain, I can see that my facets are all fairly even. I have a really good movement to it, which I'm very excited about. So that makes me pretty happy. To remove the remainder of any of the dop wax that is still in here, I'll just use some denatured alcohol, and that should remove everything quite nicely. Now before I remove this, if this were an actual chain that I was going to do, I would then begin the polishing phase of this. And I would do that with finer and finer files, and then follow that up with different sandpapers. And then finally, I would do my buffing compounds on the polishing arbor. Keep in mind that if you use a polishing arbor, you want to wrap your chain around something like a baseball bat so that you protect your hands and yourself from that chain flying in there as well. To finish this, and you can do this while it's still attached to your dop stick, you can take finer files to remove all of the file marks from our cut 2 file that we've used here. And then you can use successively finer and finer sanding sticks to remove these. Keep in mind that when you do any kind of filing or sanding, you want to file and sand in opposite directions until you see the previous marks removed before you proceed on to the next. And there you guys have it. In our Facebook group, the topic has come up a couple of times about creating a finished project the very first time. And as I stated in the last video, that is not the goal of these projects. The goal of these projects is, one, to create your first sample, not a finished piece, but your sample, the one that you learn the skill on, the one that you can come back to and look at and remind yourself of what needed to be done next, or what maybe you needed to try differently to make it work more appropriately, or to make it work better. So don't be afraid to keep these as your samples. You should never jump right into a project thinking that that is going to be the one you are going to sell or give away, especially if this is the first time you've ever learned this skill. Use these as your skill and keep these. They are going to be extremely valuable to you later. Now, another video was shown previously in our group, and this chain was made with round links. And so obviously the question remains, well, why didn't we just do it with round links? Absolutely, it would be so much easier. However, by doing it with the oval links, you learn some very valuable skills. You learn those skills of making sure that that ratio is the same. You learn how to cut those links on that smaller curve, how to attach them together. Not only that, but this is the traditional method of a curb chain. It is more feminine, and it will also set you apart as a professional versus somebody who's just trying to make a curb chain for fun. I hope that helps, and I hope you guys enjoyed the project. We look forward to seeing your samples as well. Talk to you guys soon as we do the next project.